Good afternoon, it's Graham Healy from the Healy Report. You know, I just thought I'd do a quick live video and I'll put it through on YouTube shortly. Just got to go to the hospital for a few x-rays today. Now, it's just been announced that Donald Trump has signed an executive order to stop all of the gain of function bioweapon experimentation. Now, those of us in the know realised this was going on from before 2020, but now it's public knowledge, and I wonder how many of those people who thought we were all conspiracy theorists are ringing us up and apologising now. Where are you? You know, this is the trouble. Now, I'll just read this out. This is by Laura Ingraham, and I've seen it in other spots, but she, of course, has Robert Kennedy Jr. announcing that gain of function will be banned by the Trump administration and no funding will go into any of it anywhere in the world. So it'll be interesting to see how the mRNA technology labs that were being established in Melbourne, and I think in other parts of Australia, are going to go now. So Trump's put a big wedge on it, so that's good. I'll just read this out just for those who criticised many of us over the last 5 years and that we don't know what we're talking about. And it's not that we're the experts, but you've just got to have some common sense in all this and realise when you're being gaslit, and have a what I call discerning of the spirits at least, or even just think, hang on, there's all this mass propaganda, something's not right here. But no, you know, people just follow, and anyway, we can go on about it, but I'll just read this out. Finally, we connect the dots. Now, these dots were connected by, you know, my associates and what have you, really early in the piece. I mean, I was looking at this at 2020, and others were looking at this before 2020. So in 2014, this is Laura Ingraham, the Ingraham Report. Make certain you sign up to her. I think she's on Fox News, or she might have a separate one on Fox News. She's great. Finally, someone connected the dots. In 2014, after 3 of Fauci's bugs escaped, 300 scientists asked Obama to shut him down. Obama declared a moratorium, but Fauci, get this, Fauci moved the experiment offshore, mainly to the Wuhan lab. Can you believe that? The little lying scumbag, what I call the mass murderer, Fauci. He should be in Guantanamo Bay, or we can whack him into Alcatraz when Donald Trump finishes getting that ready. Now, for our own government, CIA, FBI, state, DOE, all say these experiments likely sparked the COVID pandemic, or as we always said, the plandemic. And it all started as bioweapons research in 1947. President Trump has moved to shut it down for good. Now, really, if you really want to get some depth in all this, I'd suggest the following books, and I'll just lift them up, and they're in reverse, but I'll read them out. One is COVID-19, a Bioweapon, a Scientific and Forensic Investigation by Richard M. Fleming, PhD, MD, Juris Doctor. This guy called it way before anyone else, or I think there's another guy that deals with international copyright, just forget his name now, but he called it as well. So that's sort of back to front, but you can buy that book online by Dr. Fleming, and it gives you the details of the whole bioweapon thing. He traces it right back. I mean, I bought that really early in the piece. And of course, Robert Kennedy's book, which, of course, it looks backwards there in the phone, but The Real Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy and Public Health by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That is a must for your bookshelf if you really want to know the truth. And of course, our favourite Dr. Peter McCulloch, his book, which exposes a lot of this stuff, The Courage to Face COVID-19, Preventing Hospitalisation and Death while Battling the Biopharmaceutical Complex. So the reality is this: you've been gaslit all the way along. Dr. Fauci should be, I believe, get the death sentence for what he's done. That's my personal belief. Should get the gas chamber, actually, because his experimentation, which were illegal, in the Wuhan lab, created COVID, which, you know, it wasn't any worse than a bad flu, but its spreadability was a lot worse because they genetically engineered it. So they mucked around with the genetic coding, and then they created the solution, didn't they? An mRNA injectable that was experimental, all courtesy of the evil Dr. Fauci. I mean, the SS in World War II with the Hitler side of the SS would have been proud of Dr. Fauci. He's killed more people than the SS ever did. And when you want to really get the depth about the evil behind Dr. Fauci, get that book by Robert F. Kennedy, The Real Dr. Fauci, right? And, you know, it's all there. You can read, and it's all correctly referenced, you know, irrefutable evidence. So, there we are. There we are, folks. We've been totally gaslit by the Australian government. We've been totally manipulated by Big Pharma just to make money regarding an experimental drug which has caused a great deal of harm. And those politicians who have jumped to the side didn't stand up to the plate, except for Gerard Rennick, Senator Gerard Rennick, except for Malcolm Roberts, except for Dr. William Bay and, you know, Dr. Hobart and a few others that stood up and got crushed by the system, which I can understand that, because you lose your career. And the only doctors that really had traction were the ones that actually retired and they weren't controlled by the system. And I'm just trying to bring this one up. There was one that came through, I put through a very good summary, and I'm just going to read it out to you now. It was based on the Surgeon General, you know, facts and figures in the US. And when it's all boiled down, you'll have a look at that on my Facebook. I'll post it on this when I redo this for YouTube. It all boiled down to this. This is with the mRNA injection. 1 death per 637 doses. So they found 36% increase in all-cause mortality among the Pfizer recipients versus Moderna. 250 million Americans at least took one shot, COVID shot. 60% got Pfizer, 150 million people. The US baseline death rate equals 0.87 per year. Expected deaths 150 million by 0.00. This is him calculating that, which is 1.3 million. Now apply the 36% mortality rate and you get 1.3 million multiplied by 0.36, which equals 470,000 excess deaths from Pfizer alone, and that's 1 death per 636 doses. So now it all makes sense, doesn't it? So the full ramification of the mRNA experimental drug, it's not a vaccine, it's an experimental drug, this will unfold as the years go on. We've already been into it 5 years, and I would say over the next 5 years we will see people being put into Guantanamo Bay and Alcatraz, and hopefully in Australia many of the so-called medical experts, the ones who broadcast like parrots, it was all safe and effective, especially TGA and APRA. Many of those so-called directors, based on whatever they said, based on nothing, based on influences by Big Pharma, they should be held up for gross negligence and malfeasance to the nth degree. And in its fact, I believe they should be tried for basically murdering people. So the people who died, my father was one of them. He unfortunately got the Pfizer shot and was dead in 5 days, hemorrhaged to death. So that spike protein is actually manufactured in every cell in your body. I've looked into this very carefully, even though I've got a med science degree. As Dr. Bay says, when they do, medicine, they don't cover the study of vaccines. It's only when you become a specialist or a vaccinologist do you study vaccines carefully. And probably Australia's most highly qualified vaccinologist is Professor Nicola Provinsky. And right from day one, he just said, this is not right. The mRNA technology should never be used for a so-called vaccine. And most people don't understand what a vaccine is anyhow. But the long story short is the relatively safe vaccines attenuate or reduce down the strength of the pathogen to in big particles really, and they without going into too much detail, they manufacture a reduced pathogen in the cell of actually one of these big moths. That's how they do it, separate from the body. And then they inject that purified version in someone's arm. They experiment with thousands of people before they bring it to the public, or should do. And the body's own natural immune response recognises that as a pathogen. Sometimes it can be reduced in its strength, or it can be basically a dead pathogen, but the body recognises the pattern that particular pathogen has, and then it puts it into the memory cells, and next time it comes around, your body hammers it with the killer cell. So that's how it works. But with the spike protein, what happened there was they actually injected the pathogen with a manufacturing little package through the nanoparticles into your cells. So every cell in your body started manufacturing spike proteins, which is the poisonous part of the coronavirus, into your brain, into your body, into your cells, into your heart, into your liver and your kidneys, reproductive organs and all this sort of stuff. And then as a result, this is why people had myocarditis, this is why they had the Guillain-Barré, the nerve disorders, this is why they had all sorts of side effects, and a lot of them, it actually resulted in death. So, the all-cause mortality rate, I think, went up in Australia, something like 20 or 30%. I can't remember the proper figures, but it's around about 20%, I think. And, of course, all these figures are fudged. Even when they did the all-cause mortality rate, I think we had extra deaths of 33,287 the last time I looked at it. But the trouble is they didn't count certain years. Like one year they forgot to count it in the stats and all this. So, in other words, they're bodging the figures all the way along just to make it look good. Same thing with the PCR test. The PCR test is, as the inventor of the PCR test said, that it's not to be used to identify live viruses. It can identify anything, but they'd switch it up to the cycles of excess of something like 24 or 36 cycles or something like that. And anyone would then test positive. So remember, especially in New South Wales, when you had those idiots in charge of the government, well, in every part of Australia really, and especially Melbourne, that they'd come out and announce these cases everywhere, cases, all based on the gold standard. Remember, the medical officers in charge said, well, the gold standard is a PCR test. Then mysteriously, the CDC one day took the PCR test protocol off their website, and then admitted I've got this down on my website somewhere, admitted, well, you know, PCR tests is, you really can't identify live. They knew that all the way along, because the devious brain behind all this was Dr. Fauci, the lying scum, and he is a lying scum, who created the virus in the first place. And mysteriously, folks, wasn't it interesting how it hit America in Donald Trump's term? Isn't that interesting? Gee, I wonder if it's just coincidence. Just work it out, folks. We've really got to have a complete revolution from all this control and all this government overreach. I mean, you give these idiots 1 ounce of power and they become megalomaniacs like they did in Australia, especially Dictator Dan. I saw Dictator Dan prophetically going to jail. Now, I know moves are underfoot to charge him criminally. He should be in jail for what he did. He acted on his own. He didn't have any scientific advice. None of them did, actually. They just did what Big Pharma told them to do. You will roll, and same with Scott Morrison. A lot of people saying, oh, Scott Morrison's a Christian. You know, like hell he is. He backed up. He might have pretended to be one, but he backed up all the states with funding to roll out the injections. And in the meantime, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin was banned. A drug that was safe for 70 years. Titled as a horse dewormer. For goodness sake, I give ivermectin to my cat who's 12 months old. It covers everything. And now, funnily enough, they discover that ivermectin's curing cancer. How's Big Pharma going to make money out of that? Folks, you know, the day of enlightenment is here. And gradually I think people are starting to wake up. But now, thank God that Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. are in the US, and the likes of, you know, Dr. Peter McCulloch. And I must admit, I must thank Clive Palmer for bringing McCulloch and all the other, you know, Tucker Carlson, all these guys out to Australia. You just needed the money to bring those guys out, and thank you, Clive Palmer, for doing that. I know a lot of people don't like Clive. I don't know why, probably tall poppy syndrome. But if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have Senator Babette and these guys and that big tours that they've done of Australia to actually enlighten people with the truth. Now, what I'm seeing over the next 3 years, since we've got the communists in charge now, i.e. Labor, what I'm seeing is, of course, we'll go in a spiral to the bottom, you know, wind up in debt tremendously. Of course, you know, be all right for, I'm semi-retired, so I suppose it'd be all right for me, and I'm on the other side of the continuum. But at the end of the day, Australia's sort of going through the Joe Biden era. So I've always called Albo Joe Biden's brother, Sleepy Joe's brother. So we'll go through all that, and you know, we'll go through all the climate scam. They'll increase that. They'll try and ramp that up as much as they can, because by the time the next election comes around, we'll have the likes of General Gerard Rennick. He'll have people first building like an army. And I think, you know, there are other things I'm not going to say on this broadcast, but we'll have a third alternative. I believe it'll be people first with Gerard Rennick, very similar to Nigel Farage's Reform the UK. I predicted Nigel would be the PM about 3 years ago, and everyone laughed at me then. They're not laughing now, are they? And with the Liberal Party, it's finished. It's in complete meltdown, and it'll completely melt down. They need to get rid of the woke, and they need to get rid of all the associated people around the Turnbull factions and just burn them out, smoke them out. And I also believe that Andrew Hastie will wind up being the reformed Liberal Party. But, you know, I could never trust them again, the Liberal Party. Maybe under Andrew Hastie, but I'm putting my money on Gerard Rennick. Look, if you put Gerard Rennick in those debates that happened over the last election, he'd wipe out both of them. You know, they don't know anything. They're just ignorant. And no disrespect to them personally, but 25 cents a litre, and even with Dutton, 25 cents a litre in fuel. Oh, gee, that's great, mate. And let's revisit, what is it? Where you pay your house off. I forget what it is again. Negative gearing, for God's sake. That's like Ray trying to raise a debt again. And of course, Albo got on promising people everything that all he's going to do is clock up debt doing it. It'll be like the Whitlam era. That's what it's going to be like over the next 3 years. So, I'll do a ride out of it, being on the pension and all that sort of stuff. But anyone in a business, something, look out. The government's going to nail you. They're going to tax your superannuation. They're going to tax everything that moves. They'll put more tariffs on everything that you can possibly imagine. And then they'll open the windows, not of heaven, but they'll open the windows of hell for the multinational corporations to rape, pillage and plunder Australia for 3 years. And at the end of that, we'll be building up in the background with Senator Rennick, or General Rennick as I call him, and we'll have real conservatives that have solutions to problems, and also the financial problems for the next 3 years. So that's it. Now all us conspiracy theorists, so-called, were turned out. Guess what? Turned out we're right all the way along. I'm waiting for those phone calls from all those people that criticised me. Senator Rennick, Senator Malcolm Roberts, Dr. William Bay, all those people who tried to crucify us for telling all these conspiracy theorists and all the what's this group on the internet, batshit crazy, or they call themselves, all these morons who get so brainwashed that they can't think straight or lie straight in bed. And just as I said to Michael Griffith, and they were saying to me that, they don't care about the negative comments because it increases their reach on their Facebook or whatever it is. I said, who needs them? I would rather be speaking to half a dozen decent people than a whole lot of morons, fair dinkum. So my attitude is, if I even hear anything negative, like some idiot who raves on for about half an hour on a lefty issue, bang, I just ban them. I don't even want their mentality getting into my head at all, because it's just like, why should I allow them to occupy my mind? It's like when I was at the voting booths there, I was handing out flyers for Senator Rennick, how to vote at Taringa, who just lives just down the road from me. And I had some character come in. He's got, this is a young bloke, a fairly tall young bloke with a mask on. And he said to me, I'm there handing out brochures. He comes up to me and I said, you sick, mate? And you could see he was a lefty, or probably a greenie for certain. And he said, well, how come they haven't got the 6 metre rule here? I said, mate, I looked at him. I said, COVID's finished, mate. That was 5 years ago. And he looked at me and he got pretty aggressive, actually. And I said to him, why are you sick? And he said, I forget what he said to me, but I said to him, how many boosters you had, mate? He said, I've had 6. I just burst out laughing. And man, he got very nasty, actually. And at the moment I've got a dislocated shoulder, but I thought to myself, yeah, you want to move it further, boy, and I'll show you what it's all about. But no, anyway, they're still out there, and that's you notice with the left, especially in the US, the lefties, including the Democrats in the US, or over here it's Greens especially, as soon as you challenge them, they get aggressive. As soon as you challenge them, their narrative, they get aggressive immediately. Isn't it interesting? Remember they were the little peace people, and but now they've turned into the people who promote violence. I see that. I see that in the US with my feed from the US. I say, well, why? Occasionally a woke will get on my feed, and I said, well, how come you guys always promote violence? They always do. So they're very dangerous, and you've got to be very careful with them, folks. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. And remember, Jesus is Lord at the end of the day. He's got the big picture, but as I said, I was just talking to my mentor and pastor from the church I'm at. You know, he's a very wise man. And I said to him, the church has to have a voice this time. The days of the church sitting back in the four walls and, yes, you can pray about it. Yes, you can intercede about it. Yes, in the name of Jesus, and bind stuff back with the blood of Jesus and everything else. At the end of the day, you've got to put feet on it. Faith without works is dead, folks. And the trouble is, especially in the next election, the church better start voting in the right direction, not in the woke direction, which I must admit a lot of them must have done that this last election. So, you know, you've got to wake up all round, and if we wake the church up, that will be a force to be reckoned with. And people have got to, you know, put a mark in the ground. And you've got, no matter how many people are going in the churches, they all criticise, a lot of them criticise Donald Trump. And I said, well, hang on, he's a bloke reintroducing the Bible to the schools and all the rest of it, and you're criticising him. Oh, yeah, but he was a womaniser. He who hasn't sinned cast the first stone. Fair dinkum. You know, some Christians. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. Praise the Lord. Amen. Have a good day.